Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Front Line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach. And we're coming to you on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember, our chat room's the only social media out there worth actually socializing in, and that is online at crusadechannel.com/chat. If you're following Joe and I on social media, please, wherever you find us, whether it's YouTube, Facebook. I know we cringe when we say that, okay? And we're going to get into some cringe-worthy stuff tonight, okay? So we cringe. YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, wherever you find us, please like, subscribe, share, hit the little bell, do all that fun stuff. Help us out. We also, as an FYI, we are on the radio, AM radio up in Connecticut, Sunday afternoon, 5 o'clock, interview show on the Veritas Catholic Network. We emphasize to everyone, if you like really good interviews with some very interesting people, writers and personalities, we've had interviews on there. Joe, who we have Raymond Arroyo, we have Bill Donahue, Phil Lawler, Austin Ruse. So we have a lot of good stuff going on there. Make sure you download the Veritas Catholic Radio Network mobile app. And also, if you are in that area, Connecticut, Northern Long Island, Westchester, you could find it at 1350 on your AM dial. And finally, before we get into the meat and potatoes, remember, Joe and I do have a Patreon page. If you like what we do, you want to keep us going, drop in a couple bucks every month, small subscription, please, patreon.com// The Frontline with Joe and Joe. And Crusade Channel, all right, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, is doing a subscriber push. So we would emphasize to you to go on Crusade Channel website, crusadechannel.com, hit listen free, and you're going to get all of the Crusade Channel content. Mike Church, Rick Barrett. He just, from what I understand, Joe Resinello added Kennedy Hall, all right? Great guy, very informative, very entertaining. So Crusade Channel is definitely worth your time, and we would encourage you to take advantage of the free trial subscription, and we're firmly convinced that you would want to become a subscriber to the Crusade Channel. Now, having said all that, all the promo stuff's out of the way, okay? Let's get to the cringeworthy stuff, okay? I want to start with this, and it's not in our agenda tonight, all right? But I'm throwing a curveball at Joe Resinello. Do you know this Congressman, Joe Resinello, Ted Lieu? You know this guy?
No, I did. I heard he said he's Catholic, yet he believes in, like, the devil.
Yeah. Basically what he says, I'm Catholic. I believe in all the lies of the devil. But really, no, he tweeted this. Now, you want to talk about public, because the Bishops' Conference is obviously making some moves, okay? Some people think they're weak moves. Others think they're strong moves. Let's just call them moves, okay? To try to safeguard the souls of these people who support intrinsic evils, okay? Like Joe Biden, like Nancy Pelosi, like Ted Lieu, if you think about it. So this is a guy, he tweets out, and I'm paraphrasing, but he tweets out, I'm Catholic, and I support a woman's right to choose. Doesn't stop there, though, folks. The hits just keep on coming. I'm Catholic, and I support a couple's right to divorce. Doesn't stop there. I'm Catholic, and I support same-sex marriage. I'm Catholic, blah, blah, blah. And here was the punchline, Joe Resinello. And I dare you to withhold the Eucharist from me. Can you imagine the nerve on this guy?
Well, he doesn't understand the faith. But here's the thing. He is Catholic. He's not a practicing Catholic.
Right.
You see, that's the difference. Like, this is the, listen, this is there's a lot of American Catholics that believe in the same things. They'll call themselves Catholic, yet they'll support people who are for abortion. They contracept. They seem to somehow separate the teachings of the church versus Jesus, and yet they're still Catholic. Here's the sad reality. You're not getting the grace of the sacramental life when you're doing that. Anytime someone tells me that they say, I'm Catholic, I don't get anything out of it. I don't get anything out of it. The first thing, do you go to confession? Do you go to confession? That's the first thing. Do you pray? Like,
how about do you go to mass?
But how
about Ted Lieu? Do you go to mass? Do you sit in front of the tabernacle, or do you? Go ahead, Joe.
No, but even if you go to mass and you're not going to confession, it's like a hose that has dirt in it. It's blocked. The water's not coming out. A priest one time said to me, Like the grace of God is always coming down, but we put up an umbrella. The umbrella is sin. You have to go to confession. You see, sadly, this is something I think, and this is a message to all of the bishops and all the priests out there. We don't go to confession anymore as a people. The line to the communion, and this is in everything, all churches, the line to the communion is long. The line to the confessional is short. Years ago, before every single mass, I actually remembered this in my own parish, there was confession. The boxes, people were going.
Well, let me say this in defense of, and I've said this before, my wife and I have chosen, it's not a judgmental thing, okay, because there's plenty of times when Orly and I, we go to Novus Ordo Mass, okay? We've chosen to go to Latin Mass. And I will tell you, one of the things I noticed about Latin Mass, amongst other things, is what Joe's talking about. Confession before every Mass. And Joe, by the way, yes, I'm going to pat them on the back. Latin Mass going Catholics, that confession line is long.
It should be.
Yeah, confession line is long. Why? Because people are terrible? No, because as Catholics, we realize we're sinners. Obviously, Ted Lieu does not understand. Perhaps maybe he's the one conflating politics, by the way. See, he's accusing the bishops, Joe Resinello, of conflating politics with our faith, okay? But no, you are. You are, because what you don't understand, Representative Lieu, is what's called intrinsic evil. He says, well, why don't the bishops go after Bill Barr? Because Bill Barr supports the death penalty. Well, I got news for you, Representative Lieu. Okay, the difference is, although the church has come out recently saying we really don't need the death penalty, the church has stopped short of saying death penalty is an intrinsic evil, because the church has never taught that the death penalty is an intrinsic evil. Now, you don't run around saying, let's kill all the prisoners on death row. Okay, that's not what we're suggesting. But there's a difference between supporting baby killing, which is what you support, or destroying validly ordained marriages, which is what you support, or intrinsic evils like sodomy, which you support. There is a difference there. And you just don't, quite frankly, know the faith. Or, Joe, and I'm going to hand it over to you, or you want the faith tailored to your worldview.
Well, that's
ultimately what I think it is.
Typical. You know, a lot of people are like that. They don't want to bend their knee. But a couple points. It's not about power. It's about salvation. You see, they don't know what they're covering. A lot of times when people cover the Catholic Church, even when it's discussed in politics, it's about salvation. And this is my point. God has all the cards. It's like someone holding their breath. Eventually, you have to exhale. We die. Like, all of us die. And there's one boat out of this earth. And it's Christ, and it's the Catholic Church. Jesus said it. So, not me. So, this is the thing. It's not about power. It's about salvation. That's what number one. And in terms of the death penalty, I don't support the death penalty.
And you don't have to. That's
I never did.
The church doesn't say, well, you got to support that. The church says that in certain, and the church, John Paul II actually was very strong on this. And Pope Francis basically brought it to, I guess, its logical conclusion, which is that generally, and we've spoken about this on the show, okay, in an advanced country, okay, generally speaking, you don't need the death penalty.
And yes, because basically, I'll speak to, because to be honest with you, Francis's interpretation is a bit ambiguous. I don't even understand.
Well, there's a shock for you.
I mean, so I'll just speak to how John Paul took it. He left a very small window. And to Joe's point, what he basically said was, in an advanced country, meaning the idea is, you say, I'll use an example of a country that might not have a modern prison system. Say a country is corrupt, where people are buying their way out of jail. I'll use a country, Mexico. And you have criminals that could buy their way out of jail. Say someone is a threat to society, and they're going to buy their way out of jail. In that case, the death penalty for the good of the society would be warranted. But in America, we have a modern prison system. Take someone like John Gotti. He was a horrible man. They put him 30 feet under the ground in the middle of Indiana in a cornfield. He's not a threat to society.
Right.
You see, that's where Americans, I'm just telling you what the church teaches under John Paul.
But
it's a very small window.
All right. But here's the thing, Representative Lieu. That small window, you see, he should go to, we just said, he should go to confession. You don't know that Bill Barr expanded the death penalty, and you're a lying liberal So I'm not going to believe that Bill Barr is thirsting for the blood of death row inmates. I'm not going to believe that. And if it's false, what you said, you ought to go to confession. Okay. But the difference is that, as Joe just described, in certain circumstances, in a very small window, the death penalty is not intrinsically evil. Abortion is, Mr. Lou, Representative Lou. Okay, it is. My view on immigration, if I want a border wall to protect our nation, okay, for a variety of reasons, falls under my prudential judgment. It is not an intrinsic evil. You support intrinsic evils. That means, by means of an education via Joe and Joe, at the front line with Joe and Joe, on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. That means abortion is never acceptable. Never. You see that word there, Representative Lou? Never. I hope, for the good of your own soul, because you are so full of pride, and your tweet oozes with pride, okay, that a good priest tells you, respectfully, Mr. Lou, I'm not going to give you the Eucharist, all right? You need to go to confession, or you need to see me for spiritual direction, because we need to talk. I hope that happens. I really do. For your own good. For your own good, not for mine and Joe's, for your own good. Because you're on a bad path. You're in a dark place, my friend.
Well, it's all about, it's not about power. It's about salvation. And we have to look at it as commentators of it too, that way. It's about salvation. And people don't understand that, who cover the Catholic Church. I mean, I've been reading commentary on the Catholic Church in the secular press for years. You would think that someone who's covering it would have an understanding of it. They don't. That's one thing. But also talking about like Lou and other Catholics like that in the world. We interviewed this past weekend, was his name Rob Corzine.
Rob Corzine.
Very, very good interview. It'll be out on Veritas Catholic Network. Very smart guy. Went to University of Michigan. You know, he does a lot of apologetics work on the radio. He works with the St. Paul Center in Ohio. Smart guy, clearly. And he was in a fundamental Baptist
upbringing,
community before he became Catholic.
Calvinist, I think.
You know, and he's a smart guy. And they believed in the Bible, the whole deal. You see, what we kind of, all three of us just chatting in our interview came up with, well, it's not that we came up with it, we just concluded. It's about the will. You see, being a follower of Christ, a disciple means you're a follower. You're not. I've said this many times on many shows. God is not looking for believers. You hear that term in American Christianity. Are you a believer?
Right. Are you a person of faith? Yeah. I have faith.
No,
but that requires something beyond
followers.
belief.
And disciple means you're a follower.
Right.
And another person we interviewed this weekend, Dr. Kenneth Howell, who has a PhD in theology. He teaches in Illinois. He basically said something that John Newman stated, and it was, religion doesn't save, truth saves. And Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Now, what brings one to that? Obviously, grace, but also the bending of the will. You see, it has nothing to do with your intelligence. It has everything to do with the will. It's your way, God, and it's not mine. What
have you always said on this show? And what have you always told me about St. Francis? St. Francis stood in front of the cross, knelt in front of the Blessed Sacrament, and said, what did he say, Joe? Who are you?
And who am I?
Who am I? When you acknowledge that, again, because none of us are perfect, and I hope nobody gets the idea that Joe and I are sitting here saying we're perfect, because we're far from perfect. Please. Okay. And that's not just lip service. We are not perfect because we're not saints. We, as the church teaches, seek to grow in holiness. But growth in holiness, the strengthening of your faith, the increase in hope and charity, that comes with an act of the will. And you have to know who God is. And that is the key. You have to know who God is. And Ted Lieu is a Catholic brother, okay? But he is not practicing. He is not faithful, because he just quite frankly doesn't know who it is that's on there, on that altar. He doesn't. You could never say, truly, you're a follower of Jesus Christ, and say that it's sometimes okay to kill babies in the womb. You just can't do it.
No, and also keep this in mind. I want to use two examples of that. Padre Pio did nothing wrong. He had holes in his hands and he was declared a saint. Anyone who is Catholic, I think, would acknowledge the fact that the man was a saint, because he was, and he is. For 10 years, he could not say a public mass, and he accepted it.
That's called obedience.
A decade. And he was in the right, and he didn't open his mouth.
And he was vindicated because, like you said, Joe Rossinello, Padre Pio is a saint.
And then we're going to use another example. Someone I liked a lot, actually, Karapi. Karapi was persecuted because he spoke publicly. And sadly, when you speak publicly, the devil will always, and especially when you're becoming effective, the devil will come after you. And he did. And he started to get pressure. And I remember when it happened, I was very distressed over it. And I talked to a very holy nun that I knew, Sister Carmel. She's a missionary at Charity. She's still alive, thank God. And she said to me, Joe, he should not have said anything, and God would have defended him. You see, God defended Padre Pio. It took time, and in that time, I bet you he grew in holiness. There's something about that I don't see even in well, not even, who am I, in myself, as well as a lot of other people in Catholic media. John Hardin, who was a servant of God and a Jesuit, and he was a phenomenal holy man. He wrote a Catholic dictionary, and he did amazing things. I actually know a priest that he brought in to the seminary as a result of his example, and he's a phenomenal priest. He said this: as a Catholic, we are to know the truth, speak the truth, teach the truth, and here's the catch, and suffer for the truth.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't see in Catholic media. People want things resolved on their time and on their terms. We're to suffer for the truth as Christ did. Hardin is right.
And can I cut you off because it's a very good recent example of someone who's a local for Joe and I, but somebody who we look at as really somebody who is suffering for the truth. Father Fidelis Mashinsky, okay? They had a rally last week in Brooklyn. Now, I've said on the show before on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, I've said that I've gone down to Planned Parenthood, run the procession, which was run by Father Fidelis, first Saturdays every month. I haven't been for a few months, but that's in New York. That's in Manhattan. They did one in Brooklyn. And who's that photographer, Joe? Is it Jeff?
I know.
Jeff Bruno.
There you go.
He's got a page on Facebook. He covers a lot of this stuff. He posted pictures from what happened in Brooklyn. If you want to see the definition of suffering for Christ, suffering with Christ in the face of mocking, spitting, some big guy in Father Fidelis'
smoking
face,
blowing cigarette,
smoke in his face, okay, and cursing. And I've seen this. I've seen this in Manhattan. But then these pictures were even worse than what I saw. And my wife came with me a couple of times, and what she saw. This is going back pre-COVID, okay? It's disgusting. You want to talk about suffering for Christ? My larger point in bringing it up, there's a lot of people out there that are suffering for Christ to stand witness and bear witness to the truth and to fight against intrinsic evils like Representative Ted Lieu says on Twitter. As a Catholic, he's saying it, not me. He says, I'm Catholic, and says, I support all these intrinsic evils. He would be spitting in Father Fidelis' face if he was in Brooklyn on that day. And he needs to be called out on that because he's mocking people. He's mocking the church. He's mocking the faithful. He's mocking the priest. He's quite frankly mocking Christ is what he's doing. And he needs to be careful for the good of his own soul. I'm struggling and Joe's struggling to work out our salvation in fear and trembling, as St. Paul said. Okay, this guy seems like you could support any evil there is, and you're going straight to heaven, Joe Rossinello.
Well, that's where it's sadly, it's not all bishops, because there are good bishops.
Oh, it's a ton of them.
But there are also, if we had we're at a period where the church is not efficacious in America. In a strong church, this would not take place. It wouldn't take place because the bishops would step up. I invite all our listeners on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online, check out Tobin, not Joseph Tobin in Newark, the other Tobin in Rhode Island, when Patrick Kennedy said something. which was off the wall. This was a number of years ago. I know Rick Barrett's from Rhode Island. He may recall it. Tobin went up. He addressed what he said, why it's wrong, what he needs to do. And that's it. You don't have to say it again. You see, that's your job.
Let's take a break, Joe. We're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello. We're already way in the breach. When you're talking about these liberal loonies, Joe Rossinello, you are in the breach, my friend, on the Crusade Channel. Always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com. The last live radio station standing. Remember to join us in the chat room at crusadechannel.com/chat. And follow Joe and I all over social media, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, a whole bunch of places. And stick around. I mean, this is going to be a great, we're going to be here for quite some time. So this is going to be a great conversation. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Rossinello, and we are in the breach on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. Now, we want to get into the meat and potatoes of our conversation tonight. We have a few different stories we want to cover. As always, probably won't get to them all, okay? Because you know Joe and I, we're what you call in Italian chiacchierones, okay? We're chiacchierones. We talk. That's what a chiacchierone does, okay? But we speak the truth. All right, we lay it out there and we speak the truth. But I want to make one final point. Please pray out there, all of you good people. Last week, at the end of last week, or on Saturday, I forgot which day it was, there was a bunch of very faithful, good Catholics, Jesse Romero, Father Altman, and several others.
They were in Newark.
They went down to Newark. And we need to pray for Cardinal Joseph Tobin, okay? We need to pray for him. Now, there's a lot of reasons why. But Seton Hall University, we mentioned it on the show before, and this was the reason why they were in New Jersey, needs to shut down WSOU. And I say this as a Seton Hall alumnus, that WSOU is not broadcasting hard rock, is not broadcasting classic rock, is not broadcasting AC/DC or Black Sabbath. That stuff's tame compared to what they're broadcasting now. Joe and I don't throw around labels like this very easily. It's outright diabolical. It's outright satanic. Cardinal Tobin has the authority over the university to either order them to change their programming or shut it down. We need to pray that he comes to that decision. And we mean that sincerely. He is our cardinal, okay? And it is my school, okay? And we need at a Catholic university to shut that stuff down. That is not acceptable. Having said that, let's get into a few stories.
Absolutely. Hannah Blue brings us this one. This was covered extensively, but we have to talk about it because this is, I think, very important. I think it's also very significant. The Supreme Court of the United States unanimously overturned a lower court ruling the city of Philadelphia basically put out barring foster children from being placed with Catholic social services due to its unwillingness to endorse same-sex couples. The judgment was 9-0.
Repeat that, Joe. Again. Repeat that.
9-0. SCOTUS
Joe Biden's going down the path of Obama, but we'll get into that in a minute.
I think he's going to actually do worse, and we'll talk about that. SCOTUS held that the city of Philadelphia's refusal to contract Catholic social services for the provision of foster care services unless the agency agrees to certify same-sex couples as foster parents violates the free exercise clause of the First Amendment. It came about after Philadelphia stopped foster children from being placed with Catholic social services in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia on the basis of its beliefs and practices on traditional marriage. Now, why is this important? Because we have a constitution. And I'm going to tell you this. We talked about this last week on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online. And when this happened, I said to myself, we actually were ahead of it. None of this is going to pass muster in the court.
This was way before Biden we got into this.
None of this is going to pass muster in the court. This is Sotomayor. This is Kagan. 9-0. Right. This is Breyer. Listen, this stuff, you know, I was kind of worried. Now, listen, is the court perfect? Clearly, it's not. We can go into example after example. It's never going to be either. Let's be honest. We have one person that's as close to a natural law jurist as we would want, and that's Clarence Thomas. The rest of them aren't natural law jurists, which would comport to Catholic teaching. So I'm not thrilled with really any of them, other than Thomas and Alito. But even them, they're not perfect. Again, we want natural law jurists, not constitutionalists. That's another conversation for another day. But we have a document. And until they change the document, you don't have to go to law school to come up with some of these rulings. And here's the thing, and we've talked about this on other shows. Obama had the worst record of any modern president in the Supreme Court.
Terrible.
And Joe Biden's regime is more radical than Barack Obama's.
He's going to go through the same thing. And why? Why? Okay, now we're not going to sit here. There's nothing the Supreme Court's going to do that's going to satisfy Joe and us. We're pointing this out as a small victory. But I do think, and we think, it's indicative of something, okay? The Democrats are not going for this, okay? They're not going for this stuff. When Joe Biden picks up the phone and says, hey, let's do this, like Obama said, I got a pen and I got a phone. Well, as Joe pointed out, he got more 9-0 decisions than any president in modern history. More than any president in modern history. And now, I mean, Biden, as Sarah Palin called him, all right? But Biden is going to be worse on this than Obama. Why? Because it's Obama pulling his strings. So Obama's not the front man anymore. Biden's the front man. So if Obama had any restraint while he was president, he's not going to have any restraint now when he picks up the phone. But he's not picking up the phone for an executive order. He's picking up the phone to call Uncle Joe and say, Joe, listen, I'm the boss, not you. You're losing it. You're just there. You're the package. I listened to the front line with Joe, and Joe Resinello says, you're the wrapping paper, okay? But I'm the boss, okay? And Biden is going to fare worse. He's going to fare a lot worse.
And it's not going to, what's it called? I'm telling you. That's why I would, first of all, they can't even get anything done with a majority. Their own people are not going along. I heard something recently this week regarding Manchin. Some of the left wing, Democrats were criticizing him, and some other Democrats were actually stepping up for him and saying, you should not be criticizing Joe Manchin. That shows they don't even have unity amongst themselves. They can't get anything done. And I got news for you. In 2022, they're going to lose the Senate and the House. The presidency's over, Joe. You might as well go back to Delaware. It's over.
You might as well go back to Delaware, and you might as well go get a real bishop, and you might as well make an appointment and go confess your sins. You have no power, Mr. Biden. You have no power. And in about a year and a half, the law is going to say, see, Joe makes a good point. And we've made this point at the front line with Joe and Joe a million times. These Democrat senators and representatives, they like being senators and representatives. So when Pelosi says things like, I don't care if a baby's, I don't know if a baby's a baby after 15 weeks. We don't care. Some of these middle of the road Democrats say, well, I do. I got to go back to my constituents who may be pro-choice.
That's the key.
Maybe pro-choice, but they're not your version of pro-choice. They're not, you could kill a baby on the day the baby's about to be born. And we all know Joe and I are against it all from the moment of conception. But we're talking politically now. These Democrat senators and representatives like their job. And more importantly, maybe they just don't believe in what you're proposing. But you think, Joe Rossin, I'll ask you a question. That's a topic that we haven't really dove into real deeply. Joe, they never want to acknowledge that many Democrats just simply do not believe in what the leadership is proposing.
That's the key. You see, that's the key. Again, we may not see eye to eye with the Democratic Party on a lot of things, but a lot of the Democratic Party doesn't see eye to eye with their leadership now. And here's the deal, guys. You're not going to win the chair without them. You're not. You don't just have hipsters in Brooklyn and folks down in the lower Haight in San Francisco and folks in liberal cities like Chicago who are going to vote for you anyway. You need Democrats all across America.
And they don't think like you, Mrs. Pelosi.
And it's a loss. And obviously they have the advantage because they have the propaganda machine, which is the media.
But I was going to, real quick, I want to touch on that for a second. But here's the thing. The media presents during the whole election process, Joe Resinello, that the Democrats are unified. And they peddle that narrative, even though guys like us and all you good people out there at the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online, you guys know this too, okay? How does the media get around when to use a cliche, when the rubber hits the road and votes actually have to come. Well, guess what? We find out that the media lied because they're a bunch of liars, and liars lie because that's what Brian Stelter, who we'll get into later, and Jake Tapper and the rest of them do. They lie, okay? And then when something like this happens, where, like you said, Democrats are stepping up and supporting Manchin and saying that, don't do this to Manchin. He's got a legitimate point because a Democrat in West Virginia is radically different than a Democrat in Brooklyn, where Schumer's from, okay? And the media goes like this, Joe. Crickets. We won't cover that because you lied. If you covered it, it's going to expose the fact that you lied. You tried to make it seem like the Democrats are unified, and they're not. You know who is unified, by the way? Republicans seem to be unified, but you won't cover that. You won't cover that. You'll only cover that when a Mitt Romney wants to vote against, let's say, a Brett Kavanaugh or an Amy Coney Barrett or whatever whatever the case might be. We're actually unified to a degree. But how about this? More unified than the Democrats, Joe Resinello.
Well, like I said, I think it's a loser. I think they're going to be in trouble. I personally, well, listen, I would have never predicted what just took place never. I don't see this being a two-term regime. I just don't see it.
No,
I don't see it.
They'd have to, let's use a Norkism. They'd have to hooky duke things, okay? In other words, because it worked once, it's not going to work again. We don't care. We're not getting into details. We're not getting deplatformed. Let's put it like this. All things being equal. How's that for a phrase? All things being equal, in 2022 and 2024, they don't get elected dog catcher except in San Francisco, LA, New York, and all the usual places. I do want to say this because it harkens back to something Joe started our show with about 3 years ago when we first started going on social media. This was before we even got on the crusade. And Joe talked about what he would do if he was in the leadership of the Catholic Church when it comes to social services. And I think it's important, Joe. I'd love for you to talk about it, okay? Especially for all the newer folks on Crusade Channel who maybe haven't heard this. Notice, what would you do? Because it seems to me that part of this argument was that, and everybody acknowledged that Catholic social services in Philadelphia, they called it a shining light because they're placing foster children with loving families. They just don't place them with same-sex couples, but nonetheless, they do a phenomenal job, as the Catholic Church does, as the largest non-governmental organization in the world, charitable organization in the world. They do a phenomenal job at placing kids with loving parents. My wife and I are trying to research this through the church because the state's not doing us any good. Having said that, okay, what would you do? In other words, because obviously social services in Philly is a light, but yet they tried to shut them down. Isn't that like even, does that even make any political sense, Joe? Does that make any financial sense?
Well, I don't think they care. I mean, like the Catholic Church, I've said this time and time again, they do it better than the state. Take education. We could use the city of Newark as an example. We've talked about this on the show, St. Benedict's. You could look it up. There's a movie. It's an hour long. It's called The Rule. St. Benedict's pulls from the same population that the public school pulls in Newark. They graduate 3 out of 10 kids. Benedict graduates 10 out of 10, and 95% of them go to college. They do it better. They do it cheaper, but they're not interested in that. They simply aren't. I mean, that's the whole idea about vouchers. It costs the city of Newark probably close to $30,000 if you break it down per student. St. Benedict's costs $13,000 a year. You're saving $17,000 a kid. They're still not interested in it because it's not about the kid. And here's the thing, and I've said this on shows many times, and because my mother has said it, and she's right, and I've seen this with my own eyes because I have worked before I was married in charities that the Catholic Church have run abroad. If the Catholic Church shut its doors, my mother said this, and she's 100% right, you would hear the cries across the ocean. Do you know how many people the Catholic Church feeds a day? I have seen this in India. Do you know how many people, I'll just use one order, the Salesians, Don Bosco's order. In America, particularly around by us, Don Bosco, that's a very prestigious high school near my home. Very intelligent young men go there, and a lot of them go on to do great things academically. It's a very rigorous education. But abroad, when Don Bosco originally founded the order, it was a trade school. And in places like India, in places like Vietnam. They're teaching kids trades all over the world. You shut that down, the effect, I'm telling you right now, that's when people and I crack up when you hear like the liberal press, they'll criticize the church because of its position on same-sex marriage, because of its position on contraception, because of its position on abortion. Yet they don't focus on that. And again, no one does it better and no one does more of it anywhere.
And the Catholic Church, just like Joe said, crushes any governmental agency. Crushes. You think that DYFS in New Jersey is going to place kids more effectively than the Catholic Church? But unfortunately, in New Jersey, and again, I'll disclose a little personal information. You guys know out there that my wife and I have been in the foster program for New Jersey now for a while. Haven't gotten a phone call. Maybe COVID's had something to do with that. But the Catholic Church is not active in foster care, unfortunately, unless I'm missing something, which I don't think I am. I did a lot of research. Catholic Charities is basically not doing much in New Jersey. That's a shame. But in Philly, obviously they are. And what do these diabolical ideologues have to do? We don't care how good they are at this. They're not listening to our directives. They won't put children with same-sex couples, so we want to shut them down. Well, you want to know what? Whatever you think of this decision, I know some people think it's a weaker decision. Some people think it's stronger. Whatever you think, at the end of the day, it was 9-0. 9-0. And the Catholic Church is going to be resuming their foster care services and their adoption services in the city of Philadelphia. Thank the good Lord.
And expect more 9-0 verdicts from SCOTUS. I'm telling you that right now.
Somebody ought to
expect it,
Joe,
because it's going to happen.
Somebody ought to tell Joe Biden, right? Go to we would never recommend going to like a palm reader because that's all evil, diabolical stuff. But if he did, you can imagine the person grabbing his hand and like doing that rubbing thing on the hand and saying, "Oh, I see so much in your future." In the meantime, the guy's got one foot on a banana peel and the other one in the grave. I see your future, and I'm seeing numbers 9-0, 8-1, and that's when he's going to go back into the basement.
7-2. I'm telling you, they're going to expect more of it.
And don't worry, Joe and Joe are going to keep you updated on the other Joe that's sitting in the White House right now because he's going to be toast. And let's just hope Republicans come together in this fight against these radicals and stand athwart them at least until the election, and then the American people will decide what kind of Republicans they want to vote in.
And before we get into the next story, I want to make one final note on this. Dershowitz wrote something recently about the court, and I read briefly about it. What he said was they're not, like, I'm paraphrasing, some radical conservative court. I would agree with that. And in fairness, Dershowitz, we don't agree on a lot of things.
Most things.
But I will say this about him. There is some constitutional integrity to the man. And making that statement, he has been, I think, again, we're not seeing eye to eye. I'm not saying I'm a fan. I mean, he's a self-proclaimed liberal. And we don't agree on a lot of things, most. But he does have, if you ask me, to the document. And he is not afraid to speak his mind when, in fact, he knows he's going to make enemies. And I got to give him that. Because, to be honest with you, I agree with him. This isn't a bastion of conservative thought on the Supreme Court. Yet the liberal press will paint it otherwise.
Yeah, they will. Even when, like we said, when it was Kagan and Sotomayor and Breyer and Ginsburg when she was alive, okay, as we said, under Obama, they had 4 liberal justices, and he still had more 9-0 and 8-1 votes against him. Okay, still. So bottom line is, look, we don't agree with Kagan and Sotomayor probably on anything, all right, and Breyer on anything. Or with Ginsburg, God rest her soul, on anything, okay? But the bottom line is this. Obviously, they're saying that Mr. Biden, you don't have the power to do this, or Mr. Obama, you don't have the power to do this, as they said when he was president. And the bottom line is Joe Biden's going to go down in flames, and he really just, at this point in his life, not in his regime, in his life, he should go take a good, long look in the mirror and do something to safeguard his own soul, because he's in bad shape. I'm sorry how judgmental that sounds. He's in bad shape. and he needs our prayers. I, for one, Joe does too. We pray for him by name every day.
I do. In fact,
every day.
prayed for him. I prayed for him in mass today. Truthfully,
Yesterday.
But I try to go to mass every day.
Right,
but I prayed for him. Because to be honest with you, I actually think, to digress before we get into this story, I actually think, I'm just following him a little bit on social media, on Twitter, Bishop Gomez in LA. Not that it's going to matter, because it's not, because he's still going to do what he's going to do. And there's going to be, what's his face? Cardinal Gregory in DC is going to basically let him get away with it. And his priest in, there's a Jesuit, I think it's called Trinity Parish in DC that he goes to. It's like a woke pastor. Bill O'Reilly just did a clip on the first on him, and he was spot on. I actually think the bishops are going to come out against him. I actually believe it's just going to be a stupid document that means nothing and it won't be followed. But
it may be, put it like this: it won't be followed because it won't be enforced.
But that's what I'm saying.
They'll be able to say.
But I
just
think
shame.
So. This is what I could be wrong, but I think it's gone too far.
What they're going to do is they're going to do the synodal thing, because that's the church we live in now. Okay, if you, Wilton Gregory, want to administer the Eucharist to Joe Biden, go ahead. And if you, Archbishop Cordileone in San Francisco, want to refuse it to Nancy Pelosi and tell your priest to do so, go ahead. And that's not really a solution. And that doesn't really help for the salvation of souls. But that's our guess. It's only an opinion. That's probably how that's going to shake out.
But honestly, I swear, Joe, I actually think there's 69 that signed. They said they shouldn't weaponize the Eucharist, 69 bishops. I actually believe, I'll be honest with you, I think they're going to lose. I actually believe they're going to vote them down.
Yeah, no, I
know, but I don't even think they're going to take it that I actually think they're going to say, no go, Joe. They're going to I actually think it's just a stupid document. Sadly, it means nothing because it's not going to be enforced. I think he's a loser on this one.
Yeah, no,
because I really do. And I hope it makes him think. Because this happened, I believe, in New Orleans. I don't know the players, but it was an archbishop in New Orleans, and it was, I believe, a governor or a mayor. I think it was the mayor of New Orleans. I think it was. Anyway, it was regarding segregation. Basically, the politician, we'll just call him because I don't have the names, but you could look it up, and I'm sure Mike knows about it. Basically, he wouldn't unify blacks and integrate schools. And the Archbishop of New Orleans said, oh no, you will. He refused. He excommunicated him. On his deathbed, he recanted.
And that's what Joe Biden needs to do.
And you see, that's the idea. You see, this is not about, listen, it's not about vengeance.
No.
It's not about power. That's the idea about excommunication. Because when or you say you can't receive because you're in a state of mortal sin, it's to make you think. It's a serious step because what they're saying is you have 1 foot in hell. And the moment you die, you have 2. So get it. Start thinking about it, guy. You see, that's the idea. It has nothing to do with political power. And that's what the press doesn't get.
Well, the press is never going to get it because they don't want to get it. But hopefully the Holy Spirit is working on Joe Biden. That maybe all of these. So I think it was Archbishop Rummel in New Orleans.
That's right.
That Joe was referring to. So I think what happens now I lost my track. All right, now don't worry. It doesn't matter. We have to take a break anyway.
I'm sorry.
But if the Holy Spirit, when the Holy Spirit, and now that the Holy Spirit is probably working on Joe Biden because of all the talk of his position on abortion, hopefully this is going to resonate with some of the other pro-intrinsic evil Catholics out there, and they're going to repent. Hopefully they're going to repent. That's the bottom line. So you're at the front line with Joe and Joe. On the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Speaking of the crusadechannel.com, we encourage everyone to go on crusadechannel.com, hit listen free, and get access to all of the station's content with the hope that you'll become a subscriber. Because Mike Church has a great lineup at the Crusade Channel. We know that you're going to love it. It's Mike Church, Rick Barrett, Joe and Joe, Brother Andre Marie. Now Kennedy Hall is on the Crusade Channel. A lot of great stuff, not just for Catholics, for all people who are interested in these very, very important issues. So stick around with us. Remember, also, wherever you find us on social media, like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. We have our Patreon. It's still up there, patreon.com/Frontline with Joe and Joe. If you want to support us with a small contribution every single month, that would be great. And we're on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network up in Connecticut. Make sure you download the app, Veritas Catholic Radio mobile app. Joe and I have about 15 interviews up there already. We are on every Sunday at 5 o'clock, and there's a podcast available so you can listen to it at any time by downloading the app. Stick around. We got a lot more to talk about. Welcome back, everyone, to the Front Line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Rossinello. Way in the breach. Joe, I think we're actually storming the machine gun nest.
Oh, we're
tonight.
going off.
We're going off tonight. We're not just in the breach hurling grenades. We're storming the machine gun nest, okay? We're trying to take out those nasty bastards that are in the machine gun nest and take them out now. Figuratively speaking, of course. Just by what we always call the greatest counter-revolutionary act you could commit right now, which is to open your mouth and speak the truth. That's what needs to be done. That's what Joe and I are doing on the Crusade Channel, always on air, always online, at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Let's jump right in. Now, Joe Biden, all right, well, now he's in charge of the IRS, and they're causing trouble again.
And this is kind of related to the other story with the 9-0 ruling in the Supreme Court. We're going to talk a little bit about it. Basically, Tristan Justice of the Federalist tells us this one. Biden's IRS declares Christian activism too political for nonprofit status. Last week, Biden's IRS denied a Texas Christian group's application for nonprofit certification, claiming its educating on Christian values is political. This is what they said. You do not qualify as an organization described in IRS section 501c3, wrote an IRS office official. Basically, his name is Stephen Martin in a letter. It was dated May 18th to the group. The group's name is Christians Engaged, and they're accusing the Garland-based group of political campaign intervention. That illegal intervention, Martin explained, is the group's working to, here it is, instruct individuals on issues that are prominent in political campaigns and instruct them in what the Bible says about the issue and how they should vote. These issues include the sanctity of life, the definition of marriage, and biblical justice.
Now, real quick, though, we'll get into it. What's biblical justice? Death penalty.
Well,
death penalty. I mean, that's
also
what
heaven and hell,
right.
Which is even
heaven and hell. And the things that you could do in this world and support in this world to earn you hell. But it is also, I believe, talking about death penalty. But go ahead.
These issues generally, distinguished candidates are not associated with political party platforms. Okay. Now, in fairness,
there's a lot here.
There is a lot to talk about. But I try to be fair. I don't know what the section of the IRS, like, I never read the statute. I'm not a lawyer. I do work as a compliance officer, and I do read statutes. I just didn't read this one. So I don't know how much room there is with regard to, is it a religious activity? Is it a political? I don't know. So in fairness, I want to state that. Also, I don't know about Christians Engaged. Like, this is an article.
Right.
So I don't know. However, okay, with regard to what they're talking about, sanctity of life, definition of marriage, and biblical justice. That's part of being a Christian, whether you're a Protestant or you're a Catholic. And if they're basically, because that's what the church should do too. The church is apolitical, but what the church can do, and I have seen this in my own church, what they have done is in the Sunday bulletin, put issues, straight issues, no candidates' names. This is what the church teaches on this issue. This is what the church teaches on this issue. This is what the church, that is fair game.
That is
fair game.
Because they're trying to suggest that there's no overlap between religion and politics. And that is the American lie.
That is a lie.
And that politics and religion are separate from one another. No. When you kill babies, that's an intrinsic evil. You, Mr. Martin, call that a political teaching, I guess, or using the Bible to influence a political point of view. No. Our view is that, and correctly so, that abortion is baby killing. It's an intrinsic evil, and it's never to be allowed. And that is rooted not just in the natural law, but our Christian faith. Okay? Natural law and Christian faith. So, yes, there's going to be overlap. And what are they doing? They're being sneaky and slick, like leftist scumbags are, okay? And what they're trying to say is that if you teach a religious teaching and it has political implications, we're going to take away your 501(c)(3) status. This is a shot across the bow of the Catholic Church. God bless Christians Engaged. We love them. They're separated brothers and sisters, but we love them, okay? And they're probably in agreement with us on abortion and these other things, okay? This is a shot across the bow of the Catholic Church. Remember what Ted Lieu said, Joe, and what we started the conversation with. He said, deny me the Eucharist. I dare you. That's a political threat, Joe. That's a political threat, and that's what the IRS is doing to this
But
group.
I'll be honest with you. You're going to lose in the court if you're doing that. You see, this is why and that's why we link this to the other story. I don't sweat this at all. If they're doing that, and that's why I wanted to preface, I didn't read the statute and I don't know the organization Christians Engaged outside of the article. Let me press that.
Remember Paulie from Rocky when he looked at Rocky? He says, I don't sweat you.
Well,
that's what we need to say.
Well, I don't sweat this
you
because it's going to lose in court. You see, this is the track record. I'll follow this story. I'm interested in it for my own sake. You're going to lose in court. It's the same routine. It's what Obama did, and it's just what we covered. You're not going to get away with it in the court. You can't. You see, this is why I read something today on this, Joe. It said, biblical teachings. This is what it was a quote. Biblical teachings are affiliated with the Republican Party. Well, to a degree, they are. But that doesn't allow you to not give them nonprofit status.
Right.
And if that is what you're doing, I tell you this now as a layman who is not an attorney, you will lose.
Right.
There's no doubt about it. You're going to lose in the court.
And if atheists or let's say any atheist groups, Americans United Against Churches, so whatever that nonsensical those atheist groups are, okay, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, because theirs is a belief, Mr. Martin at the IRS, theirs is a belief. Atheism is a belief. It's not the default position of the United States. It's not the default position of the world. It is a belief, just like the Catholic faith is a belief. Okay, Buddhism is a belief, okay? And you could weigh these different beliefs and argue and debate, which is what we should be doing. That's why Joe and I pray to St. Dominic before every show, because St. Dominic founded the order of preachers. He preached the truth. The Dominicans, as Father Calloway calls them, the dogs of God, the Dominicanes, okay? St. Dominic, we want debate. We want robust debate because we know that the Catholic Church embraces the fullness of the truth. That's what the church possesses, okay? But it is a belief nonetheless. And so do the atheists have belief. And when their belief in no God, because that is a belief, okay, spills over into politics, under this standard that you're imposing on Christians Engaged, you need to shut them down too. That means that Freedom from Religion Foundation can't take a position on the death penalty. They cannot take a position on abortion. They cannot take a position on anything political, according to your standard. But we know that that's not the case. 501(c)(3) organizations take political positions all the time.
Well, you can't, like I said, just using the example of the church can say, not without using a political candidate's name, you could say, if you are, and they do, in 1998, the bishops came out with 5 intrinsic evils in the United States. And they basically say you cannot support these. These are wrong under every condition, under every time, under all circumstances.
Right.
You can do that. Now, again, I'm going to follow it. But my bet is if they are saying, going along these lines of, biblical teachings are affiliated with the Republican Party, therefore we're not giving you status, you lose. You lose. Period. End of story.
Wait for another 8190.
And that's what I'm saying.
Or maybe even 6-3 if all
and
the
that's
liberals
why,
go,
I'll be
that's
honest
fine.
with you, going into this election, I mean, I've learned a lot, even personally, because I will never, ever, 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 ever put faith in a politician. I put too much faith in Donald Trump. And this is not a slight against Trump. It's a commentary on me. I have to put my faith in God. God is going to solve the problem. Politics is a never-ending struggle. It's a never-ending struggle. We have to be involved. In fact, our church calls us to vote. It's mandatory. You have to engage yourself in the public square. However, the answer lies with Christ. It's not going to lie in political power. I'm telling that I've learned. With that said, I was very concerned, as if like, you know, the checks and balances weren't going to work. Are they going to work perfectly? No. They're not. And the church, the country isn't perfect. The government isn't perfect. The people in the country obviously aren't perfect, and I'm not perfect. However, checks and balances, I've seen them already work since the Biden regime has been in place. This is not going to fly, Joe. I'm going to tell you, it's just not going to fly.
It's not going to fly, but there is a problem, as there always is a problem with those that we call rhinos. Okay. And these people, Republicans, they just need to get their act together. Now, this is what bothers Joe and I about this story. One of the things that bothers Joe and I, okay? In May, a group of 43 Republican senators proposed legislation to prevent a repeat of the 2013 IRS targeting scandal titled the, quote, "Don't Weaponize the IRS Act." Now, we don't have to tell you what that is. You know what that is. That is the administration, whether they admit it or not. Obama's a liar. He's a professional liar. So he told the IRS to go after conservative groups.
Oh, no doubt.
And we know the Biden regime and Kamala, she can laugh all she wants. They're telling the IRS what to do. They're telling them to clamp down on Christians. We know that. Okay. Why only 43 Republican senators? And where are the moderate Democrats to go along with this? Where are you? But leaving the Democrats aside for a second, okay? Why only 43 Republican senators? Why isn't it 50 and looking to clip off a Manchin or Sinema? Okay, maybe Sinema. We don't know. She's all LGBT. But nonetheless, maybe Manchin, maybe a couple of others, Tester, okay? Guys like that. Why is it only 43? That means you could take your Don't Weaponize the IRS Act. You can mail it to me, and I'm going to make use of it in my home. I'm not going to get crude on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online. But you know what I'm going to do with your act when I have it at home, okay? Because it means nothing. It's an empty gesture. Where's Mitch McConnell turning around saying, oh, the IRS doesn't get weaponized, and every one of you Republicans is going to fall into lockstep on this, all right? And remember something. There will come a time, as Joe says on the show all the time, there will come a time when these people don't have power. And when the American people sweep in real Republicans, real conservatives into power, you don't want the IRS doing that to you.
Joe, I actually think, I'll be honest, like, and this is going to lead into this other story. I actually think there is going to be political backlash because of this. We've talked about this on other shows on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online. They've taken it too far. I see it again. The best political polls are in your own neighborhood, in your own backyard. I see it on social media, my own social media, people I grew up with, people who are indifferent and not political are getting involved, really involved. This stuff is over the top. And my mother said, again, I always listen to my mother. It was one of the smartest things I've ever done is listen to my mother. She's a bright woman. She said this, she said, I mean, it's not exactly nice, but I'll share it with you. She basically was like, even stupid people are getting it. And she's right. Even stupid people are starting to see what's going on. It's obvious. The Biden masquerade that I'm a centrist is completely broken down. And I'll tell you this, I don't like, people were afraid, like, Harris is going to be I actually invite her to be the president. She will get demolished.
Those Democrats that
will get demolished.
Are somewhere in the middle when it comes to Biden.
Oh,
when Kamala suggests something, they're going to say absolutely not.
She will have no success. It will be a rout like you've never seen before.
And then let's see if she's laughing then. Let's see if she's laughing then.
And I'll tell you, this is where, again, you see, Obama was a very charismatic and is a very charismatic guy. He was a horrible politician, and he's still his hand, and he had horrible ideas. Don't listen to me. Look at the fruit of his presidency. He didn't pass much. They're not going to pass much because their ideas stink. He's an ideologue. He's an ideologue. I'll flip the coin, and I agree with him on a lot of things. What's his face? Santorum is an ideologue. He would never succeed. He's too Catholic. There's no way a true practicing believing Catholic will succeed as the president of the United States, nor would an Orthodox Jew. America is not going for that. The same idea plays for Obama's ideas. They stink. The Catholic ideas don't stink.
They're just not going to go over.
They're just not going. You're not selling.
Santorum can never be president.
Oh my God! Like I actually marched behind him in the March for Life. He was 5 feet in front of me.
Yeah. No, he's a good guy.
He's a good man.
We like Santorum.
I mean,
but he'll never be president of the United States. Just like Joe and Joe would never be president of the United States. Because we're going to talk about abortion abolition.
You talk about contraception. People look at you like you have 7 heads.
You talk about contraception in a Catholic parish, they're going to
look at you like there's 7 heads. And that's no lie.
Humane vitae. Oh, come on.
Oh, please. I mean, like, that's the truth.
That's so late 1960s. We don't listen to that.
I mean, that's a fact. I mean, but
true.
Obama's ideas, that's what makes him an ideologue. That's what makes Manchin, Rick Barrett said this recently, and I agree with him 100%. He said, Manchin's a politician. You see, who was a politician? I didn't like him, but I got to give credit where credit. Clinton was a politician.
Clinton was the best.
He was the best.
I say that in a very
and I'll tell you another one
way.
Who was a politician, and I just said this to my wife, who had it dialed in perfectly, except Bernie Sanders came along, was Hillary Clinton. If Bernie Sanders did not show up on the scene, Hillary Clinton would be the president.
Oh, my stomach just turned.
Bernie Sanders, I think Hillary hates Bernie much more than she hates Donald Trump.
Much more than she hates Trump.
He destroyed her because she had the country dialed in. Bernie Sanders made her move to the left. And when she moved to the left, she lost people. And this is the thing.
Yeah, she wasn't allowed the opportunity because of Bernie Sanders. She wasn't allowed the opportunity to do what her husband did, which was be that slick politician that he was, run in the center, say all the right things. I feel your pain and all that kind of stuff. Okay. In the meantime, people forget 1992 to 1994, Bill Clinton was way on the left. Okay. He got in talking like a centrist. He was way on. It was only when the Republican Revolution led by Rush Limbaugh, not Newt Gingrich. Okay. Newt was a very big part of it. The Republican Revolution was spearheaded by Rush Limbaugh in the years leading up to 1994. That's the truth, okay? But Bill Clinton was forced to move to the center. But in his first 2 years, remember something. The market, Joe Rossinello, the market from 92 to 94, market went down because he had his wife, Hillary, at the time, in the back room concocting how she's going to redo our healthcare system. All the pharmaceuticals, all the healthcare stocks, they all went into the tank. 1994 happened. What happened? Bill Clinton, he knew he had to come to the center. I'm going to work with the Republicans because I'm a conservative Democrat. And boom, he moves to the center. And because he moved to the center and did some sane things, we had a booming economy. There's a lot of things that went on. We don't have to get into it. But Hillary didn't have that opportunity. She was forced by Sanders to go to the left.
Absolutely.
She was forced to go way to the left.
That's what killed her. And to this day, she's in Chappaqua, probably like strangling a puppy in the woods.
She's got got 2 puppies in the woods while she's doing her witch satanic ritual out there in Chappaqua. One of the puppies she has dressed up like Donald Trump, and the other puppy she has dressed up like Bernie Sanders. And she tortures the Bernie dog more than she does it. Now, she tortures the Trump dog, okay, but she tortures the Bernie dog more. And then she burns the Bernie dog in a quasi-satanic ritual because she hates Bernie for the reason Joe said. Trump just was the guy she was running against. Bernie was the one
destroyed her.
That wrecked her because a lot of those Democrats that were turned off by Hillary, and by the way, as we always mention at the front line with Joe and Joe on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, as we always mention, a lot of Bernie supporters supported Trump. Not a majority, maybe not even 20%.
Or they didn't show up.
Which was worse. Or they just straight up voted for Trump because they agreed with Trump on trade, okay, primarily trade and wages and workers' rights and things like that. So, again, those 2 poor little dogs in Chappaqua, they're getting tortured by Hillary out in the backyard. And one of them's Bernie, all right, because she hates him more. And you're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello, we are way in the breach on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. You could join us in the chat room at crusadechannel.com. crusade.com/chat, the only social media out there worth actually socializing in. We encourage everyone to go to Crusade channel and sign up for the free trial subscription. We are convinced that you are going to love the Crusade channel and you're going to want to become a subscriber. Some of you already have. We would encourage more of you to do so. It's a great lineup. Mike Church and the whole gang is there, and we're talking about all these same issues. And we're doing it in a way that the regime media is not. Please also follow Joe and I on Facebook and YouTube and anywhere you find us on social media. Help us out however you can. Drop a couple bucks in the at the Patreon page, patreon.com/frontline with Joe and Joe. And also remember Veritas Catholic Radio Network. That's 1350 on your AM dial if you're in Connecticut and Westchester and Northern Long Island, or you could download the Veritas Catholic Radio Network mobile app. So when we come back, we're going to take a short break, okay? So you got Biden. You know, if there's one thing that you really shouldn't do is you shouldn't label one half of the country domestic extremists. That's not going to go over well. Joe and I are going to break that down when we come back. Stick around. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello way in the breach, storming the machine gun nest. Storming the machine gun nest because we have our sights today. No, I can't say that, Joe Resinello, because somebody's going to call us domestic extremists, okay? I'm going to change my phraseology, okay? We are being critical of the Biden presidency. How about we put it like that? Is that going to go over well, Joe? Well, yeah. But on the Crusade channel, we can say the way it is. We're going after Biden. We're going after his regime, all right? And we're giving you reasons tonight why we have to fight tooth and nail against this guy who really should just go back home, go repent of his sins, and get out of politics and save his soul and save the country in the meantime.
Jim Hansen of the Federalist reports that the Biden regime just released a national strategy for countering domestic terrorism. It calls for abuses of state power to combine elements of totalitarian government with social and cultural engineering. It is such an obvious attempt to try to crush political dissent. They're banking on the natural instinct of most Americans to oppose terrorism by branding some constitutional protected practices domestic terror. I want to just repeat something. Some constitutional protected practices as terror. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. The Biden team seems incapable of seeing any domestic terror threats on the political left. Who am I talking about? Obviously, people like Antifa, who just beat up Andy Ngo again. They don't exist, by the way.
According to Sherry Nadler, they're a myth.
Tell that to Andy Ngo. Their aim is directly focused on right-wing groups and causes, which unsurprisingly dovetails perfectly with their goal of remaking our whole country. The Biden domestic terror strategy looks to institutionalize the unequal treatment and shut down the ability of citizens on the political right to excuse many constitutional guaranteed natural rights. Now, I want to focus on that word, on branding some constitutional protected practices. You're going to lose again. Take it to the courts. This is another loser. It's a loser.
But do you see how they never stop? Heller is precedent, rock solid constitutional precedent that held that Americans have a personal right to bear arms. Okay. Scalia, I believe, wrote the majority opinion on that. Okay. Breyer disagrees with that. He does not see an individual right to bear arms. However, Heller was decided by the Supreme Court, I believe it was 2005, 2006. That is the law of the land. But you see, as Tim Gordon, who was on our show last year, pre-COVID, and he was telling us, we remind you all the time, he said, the left sees 2 inches. They don't stop. They go get that 2 inches. Heller's been decided, and they still go after, to dovetail back into your story, the constitutional protected right to keep and bear arms as a personal right. And that was found, decided as a personal right by the Supreme Court. Okay. But if you support, now get into it, Joe, that, that's what they're talking about here. The NRA, that's high on the list of groups that you're talking about that are going to have their constitutionally protected rights trampled on.
But I also think it's
because they're going to be labeled domestic terrorists.
I also think it's having political ideas. It's basically like they're going to try to label you because they're using terminology. You're a terrorist. You're an extremist.
Right.
If you have fundamental ideas on say even marriage, you're like anything is going to be bucketed. I actually think, and this is my view, is they're overplaying their hand once again, and there is going to be a political cost to this. Just like Hillary had a political cost when she called people deplorable.
Oh, yeah.
That was a big mistake.
That's the mistake he's making right now.
You cannot make this mistake because this makes you, to be honest with you, this is a loser once again. But here's the danger, and this is what I think is going to happen. I was talking to my wife about this. They're going to lose. I actually think politically they're going to lose, but what they're going to say, and we're going to cover this in a little bit on another story, they're going to say it's a result of voter suppression for African Americans. And they're going to sell that through the media. And people are going to believe it. And you're going to see racial issues in America like we have never seen before. That's the danger here, because they are going to lose. But what they're going to say, and Joe Biden recently did say it when, what was this Juneteenth just story, because he basically, brought in the voter, and we're going to cover this next. I'll read you the language.
Well, you can bring them both together because he's doing the same thing in both stories. He's taking a large swath of the American people and he's labeling them in a certain way. So that, let's say, if you hold to traditional marriage, if you think that Democrats are corrupt as far as elections are concerned, if you think they lied to us on many occasions during COVID, if you just hold that opinion, whether you're right or wrong, if you just say or hold that opinion, you could be shut down by the federal government. You have a constitutionally protected right to say whatever the hell you want outside of inciting violence. Well, if I say that two men cannot be should not be allowed to adopt children, okay, I'm not inciting violence against them, no matter what the regime or the left says. But that's what they're going to try to do. It's a really, as Joe said, he mentioned Hillary Clinton. You would think that we're always told by the media that the Democrats are the smartest people in the room, Joe Resinello. They're the smartest people in the room. Make no mistake about it. They're the sharpest knives in the drawer, okay? Do they understand the lesson from Hillary Clinton? You just mentioned a very simple lesson that they should have gotten, which is don't call half the country deplorable. It's not going to end well for you, okay? Because you can't fit everybody into a nice, neat little box. You cannot do it. Not everybody thinks the same. Biden is doing the same damn thing, Joe Resinello. He's calling half the country domestic terrorists. He's calling the other half, what did he say? What's the other story? Racist, okay? Where is this going to get them? Well, where's this going to get them?
It's good. Like, ultimately, and someone in the chat room said something, and they're spot on. I have to read it. They basically said the fight is not between black and white. It's between the common man and the oligarchy. You're 100% right. But the angle they're going to go on, I'm going to read you Biden's language. This is this Juneteenth federal holiday. He said, Biden said that the holiday reminded Americans of the promise of equality that was made at the end of slavery, but that failed to find fulfillment in the current systematic racist society of the United States. He goes on, it's not going to be fulfilled so long as the sacred right to vote remains under attack. Biden said, earning applause from the audience at the White House, we see this assault from restrictive laws, threats of intimidation, voter purges, and more. Biden said an assault that offends the very democracy, and it's our democracy. That's, first of all, projection. Second of all, this is showing their hand. This is exactly what they're going to do when they lose. They're going to say that we suppress the African-American vote. That is such a lie. It's absurd.
What bothers me too more than anything.
It's such a lie. It's absurd.
No, it really is. And the media is going to peddle it, and people are going to believe it, as Joe Resinello pointed out. But here's the thing. People are going to die, Joe. Oh,
and they already have. They don't care. And here's what they want. I'm going to tell you this right now. They want the right to step up and squash it.
Right.
They want that because that will be spin. They want that to happen.
They're fighting for that. They're telling. What do you do if you have a domestic terrorist? You have to squash the domestic terrorist. No, but
what I'm talking about, I'm actually saying, from this angle, I actually think the Republicans are going to win because they've overplayed their hand. But they're going to peddle this narrative that it was a racist suppression of voting.
Right.
And what's going to happen is there's going to be violence. If there's any pushback against that violence, it will be viewed like January 6th, and it will be used against them to the nth degree through the propaganda machine that is the media.
Right.
And it will be, to be honest with you, it will hurt them because they want that response. They're using them. They're using them because I'm going to tell you this right now. Listen, I'm not an attorney. I'm not an election law attorney. White people and black people can vote in America. Everywhere. Everywhere. We elected a black president. We have a black vice president. You can vote everywhere in America. The idea about ID has nothing to do with black people. It has everything to do with illegal immigrants.
That's it.
It has nothing to do with black people. You could vote if you're black in Mississippi. You could vote if you're black in New York. Just as easily as I can vote if I was a citizen of Mississippi or if I'm a citizen in New York.
If you're a resident of Delaware, you have more restrictive voter laws than the entire South.
And that's the truth.
That's Biden state. That's the truth.
You can vote in this country. If you're an illegal, you can't. And that's what the game is.
And if you don't bring ID,
you can't. And that's the argument, because ultimately they want to turn Texas and Arizona
blue,
and then it's over.
Right.
And they know that.
But I don't buy their narrative that either state. First of all, well, we don't look. Joe and I, we're being shrewd. We're and others. So we want to be careful, obviously, what we say, and we don't want to get anybody in trouble. But let's just put it like this: Texas ain't a blue state. Texas ain't a blue state, nor is Arizona. Don't believe it for a second. I don't believe it for a second. I'm not saying that they're the brightest of the bright red. They're not blue states. And that's why the Democrats are fighting so bad to have the illegal immigrants come in, because they need to turn it blue. They're not close to it. They need to really double and triple down, quadruple down on their efforts to bring a lot of illegals into those states. They're not turning blue. But they want to cause the thing they do want to do is they do want to cause civil unrest.
Well, they will.
They do that because now this gets to another topic. This goes beyond being Democrats, okay? Because they're not really Democrats, not in any sort of traditional sense. Or maybe they are, who knows? That's another argument. They're Marxists is what they are. And they want violent insurrection. That's what they want.
Well, they're going to get it.
They're going to get it.
They're going to.
And they want to take that as an excuse to bring all the power that they need to the federal government. And again, projection, everybody out there at the Crusade channel, projection, what Joe and I have been saying for the longest time. It's projection. They accused Donald Trump of this. They accused Trump of looking of trying to do this. Trump wasn't doing this. Trump, if anything, fell short. He should in the National Guard.
Oh, I think
to squash Antifa and Black Lives Matter.
Joe, he should have sent.
All right.
He should have sent the National Guard to Minnesota.
That's right.
I would have.
He should have.
And
done
I'm
that.
not. Trust me. I'm not a warmonger. I would have. Innocent people were getting killed.
That's right. And
sorry,
Trump balked. Trump blinked. You know who's not going to blink? The left. If there's violent insurrections, if there's violence in the streets and it's being perpetrated by black people who've been lied to that there was election fraud and there's a backlash of any kind, the government, everybody basically better watch their butt. The government is going to take all sorts of power, and don't expect the Republicans to do anything to stop them. Do not. If one thing works on Republican rhinos in the federal government, it's the charge of racism. Works like a charm.
Well, they're going, like I said, they want the backlash, but in the interim, blood will spill. I'm telling you this right now. I actually think DeSantis has a very, very good shot at winning the presidency. Very good.
He's my guy right now.
And I'll be honest with you, he's not the savior. But what I'm saying, I'm just talking about winning the presidency. They're going to say just what Joe Biden just stated. They're showing their hand. They're going to say that you won because you're a racist, and the media is going to peddle it, and people are going to believe it. And what's going to happen is if you're white, you're not going to be able to go in certain neighborhoods. You see, I remember this years ago in places near me where I grew up, like certain sections of Newark, certain sections of the Bronx, certain sections of Brooklyn. You couldn't go there if you were white. You would find yourself in trouble. That went away. actually. I mean, I've done a lot of work with Catholic charities in the Bronx, in Newark, in bad neighborhoods. I've never had a problem.
Joe Arsenello, I used to go up to the South Bronx, as you did. You used to go up to the South Bronx, up to St. Anthony's. Okay,
156th Street on the east
150
side.
East 156th Street, Melrose.
That's the movie. Remember the Fort Apache, the Bronx, with Mel Gibson? That's that.
And I used to get out of my car.
Oh, no
problem. And I would walk a block or two. Okay, my wife and I have been.
I would go out with my wife.
Right. We would
no
walk.
problem.
No, you know what? Not if all this goes down.
That's not happening.
Okay,
I'm going to tell you that right now.
All right.
You're not going there, because if you do, you're gonna innocent. Doesn't matter if you're innocent. Doesn't matter.
And let me tell you something. There's a lot of mixed. Not like it was back in the day. There's a lot of mixed neighborhoods now in New York, in the 5 boroughs. Harlem, which was always a traditional black neighborhood, okay, at least for 100 years, is no longer a completely black neighborhood. So many of the neighborhoods in Brooklyn are no longer completely black neighborhoods. There's many black people there, but it's a mixed community. It's a mixed neighborhood. If the violence starts, what's going to happen? Now, it's a question. It's not a statement. What's going to happen in those places? If those people feel like regime commander Biden, you know, is telling the truth, which he won't be,
but it's
because as Joe Arsenello says, and it's the press. That's why Donald Trump was exactly correct. The press is the enemy of the American people, and they're going to have blood on their hands, because there will be blood. There will be blood.
They already do. I mean, people died last summer.
Yeah.
And they're going to, I'm telling you, that is going to be the whole narrative. They're going to turn this into a race thing, when in fact it has nothing to do with race. You can vote in America if you're black anywhere.
And by the way, Joe, I meant to ask you about this article, okay? And you're listening to The Frontline with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Arsenello. We're actually firing into the machine gun nest right now. We were storming it earlier. Now we actually have our sights in the machine gun nest. We're picking off some Nazis, okay, as we speak. But we're on the Crusade Channel, always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Here's an interesting one. Do you know that these Democrats don't even want a purge of the voter rolls? Now, to me, leaving aside absentee ballots and things, which, again, they should be crushed on those things too. How are you opposed to purging the voter rolls?
Joe, because they can't win.
If a dead person is dead,
Joe,
which a dead person by definition is dead, that person can't vote. There needs to be a directive in these counties to purge the rolls of dead people, to purge the rolls of people who've moved out. You purge the rolls. And again, we let this scumbag Joe Biden and his minions control this narrative that it's racist. I don't want dead people voting in my district because they're dead. I don't want the guy who moved out and went to Pennsylvania voting in my district because he doesn't live in my district anymore. What's wrong with purges?
Well, there's nothing. And here's the thing, because they know they can't win. They know they can't win. Yeah. I mean, you look at the country. If you ever see those, like, it's almost like looks like a heat map, like the red and the blue, like across the country. People aren't on board with this nonsense.
No.
They're not.
Right.
It's pockets of cities, and the rest of the country isn't. That even goes for New Jersey. They're not on board.
When Chris Christie won the governorship of New Jersey, and you looked at the map of the counties, New Jersey's a blue state, all right? New Jersey's a blue state in Essex County, Hudson County, Union County, down near Trenton and Camden, and down near Atlantic City. When Christie won, if you looked at that red and blue map that Joe's talking about, and you looked at the map of New Jersey, right down the middle of the state was all red. The entire state right down the middle, because Trenton and Camden are on one side, Essex County in the northeast is on the other, and in the lower right is Atlantic County, where Atlantic City is. Everything in the middle was red. That's America.
America.
That's America. Right? That's America. You know, we're seeing a lot of hopeful signs out there in America, okay? Where cities and states, counties, local municipalities, they're starting, look, use the abortion front. There are, now it should be 3,000. There are 30 sanctuary cities in America, all right, where abortions are not allowed. Supreme Court be damned. Roe versus Wade and Casey be damned. We don't care. You're not going to commit abortions in our city, in our town, in our county. There's 31 of those, or 30 or 31 of those. That's what we need to look at more. The power is in those red counties. And we have enough power if we organize and actually stand up and fight and put down HBO for a while, okay, and Netflix, okay? And I got nothing against binge watching, but there has to come time when you put down the remote control and said, oh, there's a fight going on. I'm going to have to go get into that fight, okay? That's certainly what God wants you to do. He wants you to get out there and fight for those things that are true, good, and beautiful, all right? We have the power to do it in America, all right? We just have to make a decision. What did Joe Rossinello say all the time on our show, On the Front Line with Joe and Joe? All good things require an act of the will. All good things start with an act of the will. Yes, I will do that. Yes, I will worship God. Yes, I will bend my knee. Yes, I will fight for the good of my neighbors and the good of my country by fighting against evil. Yes, I will do that. But you gotta be willing to do it, or else it's all just talk. Joe Rossinello, it's all just talk.
No, I agree. And I think this is, what do we got? Well, how's our time doing?
No, we got another few minutes before break.
Okay, but I think this is the next story, and it's important. It's a good, connection between the two. Devin Nunes basically says, why do Republicans speak to the liberal press?
Can I stop you?
Sure.
Let's pick up on one final point that I'm reminded of before we get into Nunes. We'll get into him on the other side of the break.
Okay, because that's a great story.
John McWhorter, who we cover on this show, who is a liberal, by the way. He's not, from what I understand, a conservative, okay? And Glenn Lowry, we've spoken about them on the show about they're challenging the black liberal establishment in a lot of the narratives. Do you know Biden ended this particular attack on this Juneteenth speech by saying great nations don't ignore the most painful moments. They embrace them. Great nations don't walk away. I want to stay on that and connect that with what John McWhorter told Don Lemon. McWhorter said, I do believe in reparations, Don. We've already had them. Don Lemon didn't know what to say. Did you see this, by the way?
No, I didn't.
Don Lemon did not know how to react.
He
makes Joe and Joe itch. But it bothers me because I don't want my brother-in-law to itch. And Don Lemon, Don Lemon makes him itch. John McWhorter said, we've already had them, Don. See, and this is the response I would give to regime commander Biden. Biden says great nations don't ignore the most painful moments. We have not, Joe. We have not ignored our most painful moments. Did you ever hear of the Civil Rights Act? Did you ever hear of the Civil Rights Movement? Did you ever hear of black outreach, which before it was abused and turned into quotas, okay, actually helped African Americans? John McWhorter's point to Don Lemon was, Don, yeah, reparations. We've already had them. And what he was saying was that a black man in America or a black woman in America does not have the historical circumstance that their ancestors had. They don't. You can make it in America because the reparations have already been paid. After slavery, black people got the right to vote. Now, again, it was tough. We understand Jim Crow, segregation, all of it. Okay. America remedied those things. You ever hear of Brown versus Board of Education? Did you ever hear of the Civil Rights Act of 1964? Did you ever hear of the Voting Rights Act of 1965? America's paid the price. Okay. In the correct way by trying to change people's hearts and, yes, using a bit of government intervention to help out people who were traditionally oppressed. But guess what, Don Lemon and the black liberal establishment and Joe Biden? We've already embraced the moment. And a black man can make it in America. That's what John McWhorter was trying to say.
A black man was the president of the United States.
President of the United States, and a black woman is the vice president of the United States right now, at least as far as we can tell. Okay? She laughs a lot. All right. But she's black nonetheless, and she is sitting in that chair. So guess what? Reparations have already been paid. America has embraced painful moments, and we've come out better on the other side. We don't need any more reparations, Mr. Lemon.
How are we doing with time?
We're going to take a break.
Nice.
Because Joe and I get angry at the front line with Joe and Joe. Well, we're having a fun time tonight. We're having a good time. We're talking about a lot of different things on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember to get into the chat room at crusadechannel.com/chat. And that is the only social media out there worth actually socializing in. Joe and I are on the radio up in Connecticut, not just on the Crusade channel, but on the radio up in Connecticut. Westchester and Long Island at the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, 1350 on the AM dial. We encourage you all to download the Veritas Catholic Radio Network mobile app so you can have access to all the Frontline with Joe and Joe interviews that are on there, and also the rest of the Veritas content. Follow Joe and I on Facebook, YouTube, and all our social media by clicking something that's going to help us in any way. We really appreciate it. And finally, you could donate to us at patreon.com and support us there. Patreon.com/The Frontline with Joe and Joe. We got 2 more segments. A lot of red meat going on. Stick around. We'll talk to you in a minute. Welcome back, everyone, to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello way in the breach, storming the machine gun nest, actually popping a few bullets right into the machine gun nest on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. So did we talk about Juneteenth? Yeah, we talked about. That one was agita filled. Agita. That's what we call it in Italian. Agita. That's what Joe Biden creates in Joe Resinello and Joe Pasillo, is a lot of agita. So we're moving on from that.
So Robert, Kraychick, he reports
Robert Kraychick.
He basically says, Devin Nunes basically advised Republicans to end communication with left-wing and partisan Democratic news. I think he's listening to our show. We have been saying this for a while.
And the thing is, and I'm sorry, I have not heard anybody say it. Now, Joe and I are not out of the loop. We do research for our show on the Crusade channel. We do research for social media. We do research. We look at the stories. I haven't heard one person say it, but we've been saying it for the longest time. Why are you Republicans going on CNN?
Why are you talking to these people? They're not your friend. Let me just go before I even get to the quote. And the first person to say it was DeSantis. He basically didn't invite them to the press conference. Stop having press conferences. Stop talking to them. They're not, listen, this is the message. I'm not suppressing the press. I believe in a free press. You don't. So when you come to the adult table, then you're invited. Until then, you're not.
If you want to act like Joe's kids that are under 7.
And they're not.
They're his kids cannot sit in at the Frontline with Joe.
No.
In a couple of years. Okay, if we're still sitting here in Joe's basement, okay, in a couple of years they can sit at the table, okay, because they'll be growing in, they'll be beyond the age of reason. They'll be behaved better. But if you want to act like children, and by the way, that's not a slight against Joe's kids, because his kids can't come to the table, and they are much more well behaved than the media is.
But even outside of that, what I just mean, don't invite them.
They're children.
Give them a memo. And report on it. Say whatever you want. You're going to anyway. I'm not going to get involved in this charade. It's a charade, and it's ridiculous, and it's a waste of time.
And there's plenty of leaders out there in the Congress, okay? Plenty of people that call into the Mike Church show and they talk to Mike Church, okay? Plenty of good representatives out there that do so, okay? So remember, Republicans, why don't you support the outlets that are supporting you? Go on the Crusade channel and talk to Mike Church. He's a pro, doing it for decades, okay? In other words, you get a point across to an audience that's hungering for the truth. Don't go on Fox News either, okay? Maybe a little bit. But why don't you support some other platforms? So why don't you go on Crusade channel? Why don't you come on the Frontline with Joe and Joe? Why don't you go over and talk to Bannon? Why don't you go talk to a bunch of these people, okay? In other words, that are out there and we're in the breach and we're supporting you, but you're going on CNN and MSNBC. Joe Resinello, what sense does that make?
This is interesting. Basically, what's it called? This is what Nunes said. I want to give you exact words. I think it's very telling. He said this: I still, for the life of me, can't understand why Republicans talk to 90%, 95% of the media, which is fake news. Fake news isn't the proper term. It's propaganda. It's an arm of the Democrat Socialist Party. That's what it is. He goes on. It's no different than the Chinese Communist Party, the propaganda that they put out. It's no different than what the Soviet Union did with Pravda media. And quite frankly, it's no different than how Putin controls the media today, where 95% of his media in Russia is propaganda for his regime. It's the same thing here. He goes on. He concludes.
Here's the punchline.
The institutions are corrupt, but I still think the Republicans just don't get it. He's right.
He is.
Stop talking to them. We're done. We're not having a conversation. If I know you're going to brutalize me, even if I do something good, objectively good. I used to say this when Trump was the president. If Donald Trump spent his own money to fund research to cure AIDS for the homosexual community, and the media would still hate him.
They'd hate his guts.
There's nothing he could have done. Nothing. So here's the thing, guys. You're not invited.
Right.
You're out.
You're out.
You're not invited.
And say it straight up when they're calling your office, all you Republicans that go on CNN and MSNBC and the rest of the regime media, when they call your office, say, listen, I'm not going to let you edit my interview. I'm not going to let you control the narrative. We're not letting you do it. The answer is no. No, until you stop lying. Still, you all, Joy Reid, all right, Jake Tapper, and the Brian Stelty, all right, stop calling us racist for our policy positions, okay? Stop calling us haters. Stop calling us names. Maybe we'll think about coming on. But and start out Joe Resinello saying, I'm not coming on your station because you are the enemy of the American people. We just said the media would peddle the narrative that the election was racist and they would have blood on their hands and they wouldn't give a damn. They wouldn't give a damn if you had black people killing white people and white people killing black people in the middle of the street. They wouldn't care. They're going to peddle the narrative anyway.
Well, they're going to.
Hell is where they're going.
They're going to. That's the scary thing here, because, like I said, I'm married to a black woman. I have biracial kids, and frankly, we live near neighborhoods, and I do work with Catholic charities, and frankly, I like to go to those neighborhoods. I like the people. That's going to change.
That's going to be dangerous for you, Joe.
Very dangerous. Very. You can't do it, actually. You can't.
Devin Nunes recently also noted, all right, that Republicans, and I like this analysis by Kraychick, okay? In other words, the Republicans undermine. They undermine. This is what I'm saying. This is why you got to get in touch with the Crusade Channel and other outlets out there that are doing what we're doing, okay? Undermine legitimate news media outlets by engaging with and speaking to this is the key, because words mean things. We have to describe things correctly and truthfully. Corrupt leftist operations. That's what Kraychick says. Corrupt leftist operations. He urged Republicans to speak with genuine news media and not reward unethical companies with their time. Brother, spot on, man. Spot on. Listen. Take the damn gloves off, man. You're punching them. You got a 20-pound boxing glove on, which wouldn't hurt a 5-year-old. And they have brass knuckles on when they punch you in the face. Would you please take off the way too large boxing glove and put on the brass knuckles and start hitting back, please?
Well, like I said, I mean, sometimes, the Republicans, as he said, they don't get it, and they don't want to get it. I mean, we can go on and on and on. They should listen to Nunes there.
Well, listen, Nunes,
they should.
No matter what, he's a regular guy. He's my understanding. His family owns a farm, I think, in California. I think it's like farm country is where he's from. I'm sure they have money. I'm sure they're wealthy. Devin Nunes is a regular guy, as far as I'm concerned. Because to me, regular guy doesn't mean you have an empty bank account. You could have an empty bank account and be not so regular. You could be super duper rich and be truly just a regular everyday guy. Nunes always has struck me as just an everyday guy. He's a guy you go have a beer with.
Not yet.
He could have $100 million in the bank. You have a beer with that guy. You have a great conversation. You have a great time. You go to his house. You have a barbecue. You hang out. In other words, And he's trying to tell Republicans in a very straightforward, regular guy way, guys, stop this. Stop. Okay? For whatever reason you're going to go on these shows, stop. They're not interested in your opinion. Remember the story? Forgot who it was. It might. I don't know if it was Chamberlain during World War II or whoever it was said, or maybe it was after the fact. It wasn't Chamberlain. Said if I had a little bit of time with Hitler, we would have avoided the war. What a stupid statement to make. Because you don't understand your enemy. He's not interested in talking to you. No, Hitler wouldn't have been interested in sitting down at the table and talking to you. He wanted Czechoslovakia. He wanted Poland. He wanted Europe. All right? He wanted a Jew-free Europe. Okay? He wanted to control Europe. That's what they wanted. That's what the Third Reich was all about. He wouldn't have been interested in talking to you for 2 days, 2 hours, or 2 weeks. And that's exactly I think it's an appropriate analogy to make. That's exactly what Noonan is saying. To the Republicans, you don't understand your enemy. They'll kill you if they had real power. You think that Joy Reid, because she's a black woman, wouldn't put a bullet in your head if the regime had absolute power? You think that she's anything other than a party apparatchik? Do you? You think she's a person of goodwill? Do you? She excused Steve Scalise. She justified the shooting of Steve Scalise because he's against abortion and he's against gay marriage. She justified it. She was applauding that man shooting Steve Scalise. So what are you thinking, Republicans, when you go on their radio shows or their TV shows? What are you thinking? Get it through your head.
But I would go so far as to say, and I just said this recently to a friend of mine on social media because they were talking about an NFL player recently about the vaccine who's come out basically and said, I don't care about the dollar. They could fine me. What I care about is my values. And I said, this gentleman's name is Tom. I was like, Tom, until millions of Americans start thinking like that, nothing is going to change. You see, we pay people who slap our face. We make them rich.
Amen, brother.
That's what America does. We will complain about them. We will speak out against them, but then we give them our hard-earned money. Stop doing it.
Talk about creating agita.
Stop doing it.
Right.
And I will tell you this. You get 1 million people just like that gentleman. Things change.
Right.
Because here's the deal. Their principles, I said this to my brother. My brother was in town this week helping me out. And he lives on the West Coast. There are few people, and this goes on the left and the right, that are willing to suffer for their principles. People drop their principles like a hotcake when suffering comes their way. I'm telling you this right now. It is I would say it's in single digits, where people will say, not having it, I'll suffer. I'm not doing it. Just like, what's his face? The dude from the Saint from England. He was
St. Thomas More.
Bingo.
And St. John Fisher for that.
Very, very, very few people are going down that road. And I'm telling you this, if you had the people control the narrative, if you had millions of people that are like, listen, Coca-Cola, we're not buying your product. Sorry. They changed their tune.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Chase Manhattan.
Sorry, Gillette.
Sorry, bank. Sorry, this. Not using your service. It changes. I'm telling you this right now. Sorry, NBA. We're done. Sorry, NFL. We're done. It changes. Yet they slap your face, and they do.
Oh, yeah.
And you give them money. And this is where I laugh.
Right.
It's sad.
We give them listen, the only reason they have power is because we keep giving them a ton of our money. And that's us. And we don't, on the one hand, it's easy to take money away from corporations. Don't buy the products. That's easy. That's an easy choice. The government, unless they put every small business out of business and every local business out of business and force you to buy from the government store, namely Amazon, okay, unless they force you to do that, you could just make a decision to say, I'm not going to give them any money. All right, I'm not going to buy from Amazon. I'm not going to buy Gillette. I don't buy Gillette products anymore, and a whole host of them. Okay, that to me is the easy part, and we can't even do that. We should be fighting against the fact that they confiscate our wealth and our wealth, which comes through our labor, our paychecks. They confiscate our wealth by taxing us beyond belief. They confiscate us by not forcing, but convincing us that we need to borrow at usurious interest rates, okay? Usurious compound interest. That's a theft of your labor. So those are harder things to straighten out. But not giving Amazon money, canceling Netflix and HBO, I mean, come on, that's a no-brainer. That's an absolute no-brainer.
But even like hard things, how hard? Listen, I played sports. I like sports. How hard is it? Do something else. Get out of habits. I'm telling you, force the dial. We are in control because I tell my mom, it's like, you know what it is? It's like an old woman who gets hassled by like, what's it called? Cold callers.
Oh, yeah.
I tell my mother this, hang the phone
Hang up.
You're in control. Take the phone and hang it up.
I got to tell everybody at the
That's it.
Crusade Channel a funny story. I have an 81-year-old Italian mother. God bless my mother, okay? She calls me because this is a total off-topic thing, but it reminds me, and I want to make everybody laugh. My mother calls me on the phone. I'm at work, okay? And I'm training for a new position, so it's been a little bit busy. It's been a little bit hectic. My mother calls me up, Joey. I said, yeah, Ma, what's the matter? Joey, you got to call the insurance company. They're calling me on the phone, and the recording says the warranty on the cars are running out. I said, Ma, you don't have a warranty on the car. Nothing's wrong with the insurance. When you hear it, please just hang up the phone. Joey, you sure? I don't want to be in any trouble. Ma, just hang up the phone.
That's it.
Please.
I mean, and we have the same thing. It's like with Nunes, you cut them off. Who had that policy? Actually, Giuliani with our good friend, Reverend Al.
Oh, yeah.
He treated Al Sharpton. My father used to say this. He used to say, like a non-entity. I'm not having the discussion.
Well, why would you treat somebody with respect?
I'm not having the discussion.
He got up there and says, I ain't going to support that Giuliani. He called him Giuliani. This was back in the 90s. Giuliani. I don't support no Giuliani. Who is he? Giuliani or Mussolini? Like he used to say things like that. So Giuliani had the right. I mean, and this is a good comparison. I'm joking around, but Al Sharpton actually did say those things about Giuliani, and the media now does the same thing to Republicans. No real different language. They call them fascists. Well, you might as well call them Mussolini or racist, all right, or things like that. So again, Giuliani cut off Sharpton.
Just cut him off.
Giuliani is still considered America's mayor, no matter what the left says, and he still was one of the best mayors New York City ever had, because that place was a nightmare before Giuliani straightened it out. So take a page out of his book. Cut them off.
That's all. And that's what we as Americans, what you can do. And we could talk a little bit about, like, it's funny. You talked about Seton Hall earlier. I didn't get this point in. I was thinking it as you were talking about it. Stop sending your kids there. You see, again, when you do things the right way, which Father Altman and Jesse Romero are doing, they're going in front of the bishop's residence and they're speaking properly and they're speaking respectfully. I listened to a clip from Jesse recently on that. Very respectful, saying how he prayed a novena for him. I'm coming from a position of love. We're asking you, we're imploring you. Very respectful. That's the proper way. But if that doesn't work, stop giving the money.
Right.
Don't send your kids there.
And
then it'll change.
And don't give to the bishop's appeal.
And that's it. That's all. And give to good things. There are good things.
A lot of good things.
In the Catholic Church. Don't get me wrong. And believe me, there's a lot of things you can do and we're called to do, especially if we're gifted with financial success in life. God has been very clear. Those who've been given much, much is expected. That's in the Bible. So, with that said, though, using this, in other things, just stop giving them money. And because here's the thing, shame doesn't work. Shame works with someone who has a formed conscience. Like if someone has a formed conscience and they do something wrong, you could have, like, what does the scripture say? If you have an issue with your brother, confront him. If you don't, then take it to the church. If then they don't resolve it, and that's say someone in the church is being fair, then there's nothing you can do.
There's nothing you can do.
You can't. What are you going to do? You know what I'm saying? So, like, the point is, that's them. They don't want to have that discussion.
Right.
You're not. It's like you ever get into it. I've learned this through social media. Like I would get into arguments with people.
Oh.
What are you doing? You're not like, there's no, it's a no win.
And no offense, that I found out that's the biggest waste of time.
It is a complete waste of time.
Social media arguments are a waste of time.
A waste. You're not going to, like, especially if someone is completely closed-minded to it. It's a waste of time. You're not getting anywhere. Just like I said, when it comes to the media and when it comes to corporations that have become woke, don't give them any money.
That's right.
That's all. And that's all you have to say. So
Joe Resinello, we do have to go to a break. Okay. And you're listening to The Frontline with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello. And we're just having a great time tonight on the Crusade channel. Always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Please, please, please go on crusadechannel.com, hit listen free, take advantage of the free trial subscription. We're all convinced at the Crusade channel that you're going to want to subscribe. I do want to remind everybody, Joe and I receive nothing from that. We don't want anything from that. We want the success of the Crusade channel. We support Crusade channel ourselves, not just by doing our show here, but also we are monthly subscribers. Okay. So we would encourage all of you to do that. It is a great, great channel. It's a great, great resource. Also follow Joe and I on Veritas Catholic Radio Network up in Connecticut, 1350 on your AM dial. You can download the Veritas app and have access to all of the station's content and all of Joe and Joe's interviews. And wherever you find us on social media, please hit that little click and do something to help us. Stick around. We got one more segment left. Welcome back, everyone, to The Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello weighing the breach on the Crusade channel. Always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Now, we skipped a couple stories because I wanted to get into this because we were talking about Biden and race. We're talking about how they're going to try to create civil unrest, okay? But not for nothing, the black liberal establishment, Joe was talking about shame. They need to be shamed too. And when they call you racist for doing so, double down. Double down and tell all of them they should be ashamed. Why? Because of the way they treat me? No. They're radical black leftists is what they are. Okay? It's the way they treat other African Americans. Not Joe and Joe. We know what to expect from the Maxine Waters of the world. We know what to expect from the Jim Clyburns of the world. Okay? We know what to expect from the Hank Johnsons of the world. Hank thinks that if you put troops on Guam, that you're going to capsize the island. I told you about that, right, Brother Resinello? He said that in a congressional hearing. He said, I'm concerned if we put military troops on one side of the island might capsize. Okay? I don't care what they say about me. I know that they think I'm a hater. I really don't care because I think they're all haters. Okay? But how they treat other African Americans is a story that Joe wants to tell you about.
Natalie Argyle tells us that at the Congressional Black Caucus, they're blocking a black conservative from the membership. And BuzzFeed reported on the story. They said the Congressional Black Caucus is blocking membership of Byron Donalds. He's a Republican from Florida who has tried to join the organization. Congressman Donalds has expressed interest in joining the CBC, but has yet to receive an official invitation. If given, he said he'd gladly accept. He is, after all, a black man in Congress, so he should theoretically fit right in with the Congressional Black Caucus.
Let me cut you off for a second. You want to talk about a move? I won't use the word that begins with a B. A word. Let me see how I can describe it. A courageous act. Let's put it like that. A little showing that you got some stones, okay? If Republicans take the House in 2022, and because the Democrats don't care about rules, they don't care about decorum, they don't care about history, they don't care about all of it. It's just whatever's on their mind at the time. Whoever the Speaker of the House is, that's a Republican, needs to tell the Congressional Black Caucus, you must change your name to the Congressional Democrat Black Caucus because you're lying. Because you're not the Congressional Black Caucus, because you will not let black Republicans into the Congressional Black Caucus. Okay? You need to change your name. And if you don't, we're going to disband you. And you're going to have to reform under another name anyway. But we're not allowing you to keep your name because your name is not truthful. You're not the Congressional Black Caucus. You're the Congressional Black Democrats. That's what you are. And they're treating a black man. Well, Joe Biden, what did Joe Biden say about? Go ahead, Joe.
What does everybody say? You ain't black.
You ain't black if you're thinking about voting for Donald Trump.
Well,
That's
I'll be honest with you. That is, I'll be truthful with you. My wife, who is black, has said they look for the black vote and then they disappear. I mean, you look. This is an indictment. I mean, who was that young lady who ran in Baltimore? She was like on the
Klasick.
There you go,
Klasick.
I don't know how she didn't win. I seriously don't know
because the black liberal
establishment,
and along with the white liberal establishment that controls all the power in the inner cities, in this case, Baltimore, conspired against her to say, we don't want that black chick. She's going to take our money and our power away. Okay. So they don't want her. That's exactly how it goes down, Joe.
Here's the thing. Baltimore's a basket case.
Oh.
And you know, this is something else my wife and I were chatting about after dinner today. Basically, listen, your ideas stink. They stink. They're not working in these areas. They're simply not working. It didn't work in the 60s with the communes and the peaceniks and all that crapola. And it's not working now. The woke crapola, the disband the polices, the police, organizations, the ideas stink. The cities that you're doing this in are a wreck. And in Baltimore, like this woman who's basically like saying, listen, I'm from here. I'm a black lady. I'll fight for you. I just have some different ideas. Why don't you try these ideas out? Wrong. I don't get it.
Well,
I just don't get it.
You made a very good point. It's like they go around, they look for the votes of African Americans. Well, let me ask you this. What happens when one of those African Americans that votes for you, let's say in Newark, let's say a single mom who has 2 kids? What about when they knock on your door and they voted for you and you're a congressman in that district, or you're the mayor, or you're the county executive, and they say, well, I voted for you. You asked me for my vote because you said you want to help me. Here's how you can help me. I want a voucher for my child. I don't want to send my kid to Central High School, if you're talking about Newark, or Barringer, or East Side, or West Side, or Weequahic.
I wouldn't. I'd rather have my kid illiterate.
All right, I want the voucher. I'm doing you a favor because it's going to cost you $28,000 to send my kid to Central. Give me 13 instead, and I'll send my kid to St. Benedict's Prep. What's wrong with that? They won't do that because, as Joe pointed out, they're not interested in the welfare of African Americans in the inner city. If there were, the problems would have been solved a long time ago. Businesses would have been welcomed back. Civil institutions would have been strengthened. They would have promoted family life in the black community as it was before the civil rights movement. Don't ask me how that worked out. Okay, that's because the left got their hooks in it. Okay, and they destroyed the black family in America. How about do those things? Those politicians are going to say, you're going to cost me my job. You're going to cost me my graft, and I'm not going to help you. That's exactly how that goes down. In New York and Baltimore, in all the big cities, that's how that goes down. I'll do it. Aid to you as an African-American means I'll make sure your food stamps keep coming. I'll make sure your welfare payments keep coming. And I'll make sure you can send your kid to that decrepit high school over there. Don't ask me for anything more because I'm not giving it to you. And they have a system in place that they're able to maintain their power, even though that's the case. Now, that's truth.
It's sad. It really, really, really is sad.
Well, how is that not racist?
Well, it is racist. We've talked about this on the show. That's a great example. If anyone ever challenges you, all these good listeners on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online, about systematic racism, this is what I say. Absolutely, there's systematic racism. The public school, also the abortion industry. They will stop the conversation right there. And that's the end of it.
And if you're a Republican and you're on
end of the
CNN
conversation
or MSNBC and you say that, they'll close the segment and show you the door. So getting back to our prior story, stop going on their media. Go to places where you're allowed to tell the truth. In this case, Joe's telling the truth. You're a racist. If you support abortion in the black community, you're a racist. You are. Because you don't want black babies to be born. That's a stone cold fact. Don't care what you think about it. That's a stone cold fact. If you support that single mom having to send her kid to Central High School in Newark, you're a racist. If you don't want to give her any out whatsoever, for her child, for her children, you're a racist because you don't care a lick about her. We do. But you call us racist. You get out there proudly call us racist. But we want to help that black lady. You want to keep her in chains. Who's the racist? That's the question I have to ask Joe Arsenello.
Well, let's end with this one. I mean, this comes from Crisis Magazine. It basically said conservatism inevitably is going to convert to Catholicism. It's a great article.
Or one of two
things. And basically, I mean, I think, who did he quote?
Alexis de Tocqueville.
Yeah, and basically,
and Austin Ruse, just to preface this, what Joe's going to tell you. So Austin Ruse was on our show on Veritas Catholic Network a couple weeks ago. We had a great conversation with him. He brought it up that and something we didn't know. De Tocqueville, in Democracy in America, basically said that America will go one of two ways. It'll go either pantheist, and we talked about this a little last week, pantheist or Catholic. Basically commenting that the Protestant America couldn't last. It will go one of two ways. So that's just to preface the conversation.
Basically, he basically said to Tocqueville that Americans would either totally abandon Christianity or convert to Catholicism, writing, our descendants will tend increasingly to divide into two parts, some leaving Christianity entirely and the others embracing the Church of Rome. I think de Tocqueville's prediction is coming to fruition. The left has completely abandoned Christianity and fully embraced secular liberalism. And I believe that the right, though still deeply influenced by liberalism, especially classic liberalism, will more and more find its way to the Tiber. And here's the thing, and this is what frustrates me when I have conversations with Democrats who historically were Catholic. They're not the party of your grandfather. Mm-hmm. I've said this on a million shows. They are secular humanists.
Joe, I think I agree with you. I agree with you 1,000%. This story is a lesson for conservatives, not liberals. I know what you're saying. You're spot on and exactly correct. This is what conservatives have to hear. This is what the Sean Hannitys of the world have to hear. This is what your Chamber of Commerce evangelical Christian conservatives have to hear. Protestantism has no teeth. It's all subjective. There's no central authority. What's the difference between that and secular humanism? Because you say you believe in Jesus Christ? Now, I'm not here to cheese off any Protestants, okay? But get it straight. Europe's problems didn't start with the Catholic Church. Europe's problems started in 1517 when Luther rebelled against the church and split off. And America's problem from the beginning is America is founded on Protestantism. And de Tocqueville noticed that. What do you have right now? How do evangelical conservatives talk, Joe, in this country? Oh, I'm a person of faith. Well, then is the Muslim a person of faith? Is the Jew a person of faith? Is the Hindu a person of faith? In other words, Catholic Church would say, I understand you believe in something, but the fullness of the truth is that you believe in Jesus Christ and the church he founded. And then they would make that argument. And there's a central authority there.
And that's what we talked about with Rob Corazon. He basically said, no, this was actually Dr. Howell. He said this. He said these words, religion doesn't save you. The truth does.
Right.
You see, religion doesn't save you, and being a believer doesn't save you. You have to be a follower.
Which means that the authority that you respect above the government is the authority of the church. That means, does the government have to check with the church every time it does something? Absolutely not. That's not what it means. Classical liberalism, which is a problem for conservatives, okay? Because the church has to take a back seat. No, the church doesn't take a back seat. The church is to the church is to the state as the soul is to the body. That's the classic way of that's the classic Catholic way of looking at the relationship between church and state. The church is to the state as the soul is to the body, which means what? Government can do what it wants. How we set up our economic system, how we set up our immigration system, all those things that fall under our prudential judgment. But there are moral boundaries beyond which the nation will not go, and the government has to regulate and legislate against, like, let's call it baby killing. That's the biggest example we come up with, because yes, you need the church to tell the state, no, you can't have a society that kills babies. But see, Protestantism is very subjective. So what you get from them is, oh, no, abortion is wrong. But do we really have the right to impose? Like, this is where you get all these watered down arguments.
But I've even seen that amongst people I grew up with in working class areas. And my high school was a working class Catholic school. When people graduate and start becoming successful, who were once Catholic, they become Presbyterian. That's the
well, like, that's the establishment church.
They start to get rich and they lose. You know, the church is the church of the poor. If you look at the global population of the Catholic Church, the lion's share don't have 2 cents to rub together. St. Patrick's Cathedral was built from the pennies of washerwomen and cab drivers. No lie. So ultimately, it's about bending your knee. And it's not about power. It's about salvation. It's about salvation.
And Joe's right. It's about having, like, take why we talk about politics. We want a nation that respects the moral law, that respects the church, okay, respects the natural law, and have an environment within which the individual could flourish, okay, and be free to follow God's law, because that's what true freedom is, the right to do what is good, okay, which is an objective thing. The good is not subjective. It is objective. The relativists are wrong and evil. And that's the setting within which the person contemplates God and then goes to heaven when they drop dead. We don't want a nation where baby killing is legitimized. We don't want a nation where a media is allowed to lie to people. Yes, lying is a commandment too. Thou shalt not lie, bear false witness. That's a commandment too. That, by the way, is a mortal sin and sends you to hell. Okay? The media does that all the time. Politicians do that all the time, Joe Resinello. We allow them to do it. When are we going to get it through our head? We have lost our moral grounding because we're not Catholic enough.
And here's another interesting point about this, and I agree with it totally. And this goes along with what Joseph Ratzinger said in 1969. He basically said the church will become smaller, it will lose its influence, but yet it will become more faithful. I think we're beginning to see that. Someone in the chat room earlier said that the remnant will remain. Well, I actually think the remnant is here. It's like peeling an onion. There's a lot of layers, but it's here. Ultimately, as society grows darker, and it will, and it is, I see it on my own block. You see, here's the deal. Christ said this. If you do not eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no life within you. Jesus said that. I see that in my own self. If I do something wrong and I don't go to confession, I actually feel the grace leave me. I do. Without that grace, I can't be who I'm called to be. As the church grows smaller, poorer, and loses its influence, it will become stronger.
Let me chime in there a second. Are we not a remnant now? No, let's think about it. We started the conversation early on at the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, talking about Ted Lieu. Ted Lieu is a self-identified Catholic, okay? He identifies that way. Is he really part of the church, Joe Resinello?
Absolutely not. And that's what I'm saying.
We're already in the remnant.
Correct.
The remnant exists.
I agree.
Just because you have swaths of people out there like Biden and the rest of them, and Ted Lieu, they call themselves Catholic. You are already experiencing, as a faithful Catholic, you are a member of the remnant that will rebuild this. You don't have to wait for them to apostatize. They already have. The remnant's already here, is my point.
If you go, and because lately I've been working from home because of the COVID thing.
And Mary in the chat room says, we are the remnant. Go ahead.
But when I'm in the city, I would go, because one thing about New York City is there's tons of churches. If you want to go to daily mass, there's 4 masses a day at these churches. That's one thing that the church in New York City does very well. And I am a daily communicant for the most part. Since COVID, I do what I can, but I try to get to noon mass. Any church in America, the people who go to daily mass, I'm not saying they're saints. They believe what the church teaches. Only about 3% actually of Catholics are daily communicants. I'm not touting my daily communicant flag, but what I'm saying is That's the remnant.
Right.
Whether you're a businessman or whether you're a cleaning woman.
Let's expand it a little bit. You're right, Joe Rossino. I'm not disagreeing with you. The remnant are those who believe that what's happening on that altar is the consecration of bread and wine into the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ, and treat that Eucharist with the respect that it deserves. Okay? That's being a part of the remnant. Whether you go to church 5 times a week, and I know what you're saying, Joe, it's great to be a daily communicant, but you need to believe that, and you need to go there once a week and go and worship him. You need to believe that you need confession, that no, your sins matter, and you need to confess them, okay? In other words, this is what the remnant does.
But you will, if you believe that's God, you'll want to go every day.
I'm just saying,
in German. When some people can't, and
right,
some days I can't.
Right.
But my point is, that's what will affect the others, because ultimately man sees what he believes. And when you're in darkness, as our good friend John Karapi would say, when the
darkness becomes the light and light becomes the darkness,
how very dark will the darkness be? When you're in the darkness and you see the light, I'm telling you, people will start to change.
Well, let's talk about change a little bit. We have about, we have about 5 minutes left. One person I want to mention in passing, and then another one, maybe we can get into it a little bit in our last few minutes. Jordan Peterson, and we covered this a few weeks ago. Jordan Peterson recently made the statement. He said, Catholicism is as sane as people can get. Now, this is a guy who believes in evolution. Jordan, you got to get over that, okay? And other things, okay, that don't comport with the Catholic religion. But nonetheless, think about that. And again, getting back to de Tocqueville, he didn't say Christianity is as sane as people can get, okay? He said Catholicism is as sane as people can get. Now, let's leave Jordan Peterson and keep praying for him. Here's an interesting one, though, in our last few minutes. Charlie Kirk, okay? So you know Charlie Kirk?
Sure.
Turning Point USA. So Charlie Kirk evidently was on with Church Militant, according to this article, okay? Jessica Kramer wrote it in Crisis Magazine. And Kirk revealed the weaknesses of Protestantism and conservatism. He said the world is a better place because of the Catholic Church, and that needs to be said more. Now, here's my problem, and I've had a problem with Charlie Kirk in the recent past, okay? Charlie, I don't want to hear about LGBT rights coming out of your mouth then. Now, do LGBT people have the right not to get abused? Absolutely. Not to suffer unjust discrimination? Absolutely. Okay. But if you're asking me to embrace same-sex marriage, I'm not doing it. Are you going to think about that if you're thinking about becoming Catholic? Are you going to think about the fact that we are abortion abolitionists, Mr. Turning Point USA conservative? Not first trimester, not when the heartbeat is detected, at the moment of conception. That is a human being in the womb, deserving of all of our protections. Are you going to agree with that? So in our last couple of minutes, Joe Rossino, I want to throw it over to you. That is the problem with conservatism. Is Charlie Kirk going to turn around and agree with the church on Humanae Vitae? On contraception?
Well, it's about, again, bending the knee.
But is he willing to do that? Listen. He went on Church Militant to talk about how great the Catholic Church is.
Joe,
he's got to be willing to do that.
I got news for you. That's the only way into heaven, is to bend your knee. You see, this is an idea that American Catholicism doesn't grasp. And we chatted about this weekend with 2 people. You know, Christ says this. These are not my words. Again, the entrance is narrow. And I'm not placing a burden on you. The burden is placed upon us. You know, I said this to my mother today. We were chatting about it. What did Christ say to Peter? He said, when you are older, someone else will dress you and you will go where you don't want to. You see, the entrance into heaven is through self-sacrifice, and that's hard. Life is hard, and that is the direction that we must take, to die to self, white martyrdom. That's, most people aren't going to have red martyrdom, but everyone in heaven dies of white martyrdom, and that's the way. That's how we're a follower of Christ. And that's the only way in the door We need grace to do it. That's why we need the sacraments.
Let's leave it there. We're going to have to end the show on that great point. And I would just say this, Charlie Kirk, if he's going to applaud the Catholic Church and respect the church's teachings, Charlie, that means that no conservative political solutions to our problems. That means moral issues need to be dealt with on a moral basis. Okay. So no political solutions that Sean Hannity and the rest of the crowd are going to come up with when it comes to abortion and all these things. Then you'll have our ear. Until then, I'm going to be a little bit skeptical. But having said that, we want to thank you for joining us at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. Very honored and pleased to go into the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember that we're doing a subscription push at the Crusade channel. So go on the website, crusadechannel.com, listen for free, become a subscriber at the end of it. We know you're going to want to be. It's a great, great station. Follow Joe and I on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, where you could download the app, or if you're in the Connecticut area, you could hear us at 1350 a.m., 5 o'clock in the afternoons on Sundays for our interview show. And on social media, we're all over the place. Our producer has us on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, Gab, the whole 9 yards. Twitter, please follow us wherever you find us and click so that we get a little support there. And speaking of support, if you want to help us financially, you can follow us at Patreon. You can find us at patreon.com/frontline with Joe and Joe, where you could drop in a couple bucks. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening.